I'm Jancy McPhee, and I'm a neuroscientist, space life scientist, and the executive director of SciArtExchange. Exchange. And with me is Nicole Stott, who describes herself as an astronaut, artist, and earthling. So we're going to talk to you today a bit more about what we do, but also SciArtExchange's Exchange's new Design Your Habitat project, space exploration, and the power of combining art and space. So I'm going to start. I'm going to talk a little bit about SciArtExchange Exchange, which is our nonprofit, and Nicole is extremely supportive. She is a member of the leadership team. So
I look very leadership, don't I?
So anyway, so what happened with SciArtExchange Exchange is that while I was working as a space life scientist at NASA and really thinking a lot about how do we keep astronauts safe on long duration space missions, I thought about all the challenges that we have ahead and our need for creative solutions to those challenges. So I thought we should do everything that we can to engage and educate people about space exploration and development and help everyone to work together to find these creative solutions. So I started a project while I was a scientist there and then created the nonprofit SciArtExchange Exchange to continue that work. And basically what Nicole and I and our other team members are trying to do is really prepare and bring everyone together to solve the future space, science, and technology grand challenges ahead. And our approach is to use science integrated with art. And that's an excellent approach for us to really focus on some of the things that we need, which is to foster communication and creativity and really engage people of all ages from different backgrounds and interests in the future of space. So Nicole knows very well that we are most well known for our multimedia international contests, where we invite people of all ages to learn about spaceflight and then relay their visions of the future through visual, literary, musical, and video artwork. And Nicole knows this because she's spent hours judging that artwork.
Very cool artwork, by the way. There's a wonderful intersection between science and art, and then throw space in. That's awesome.
Thank you. And we really appreciate the help because all of our judges are volunteers, and we have had a lot of judges over the past 10 years of doing this, hundreds as a matter of fact. And they come from all different kinds of backgrounds. So it's really a wonderful experience if anybody's interested. So we don't just hold the contest, we take all the best artwork and later weave it into displays and live performances that we hold online, locally around the world, and even in space. We've sent artwork to the ISS, we've bounced it off the moon, and this is our way to really engage not just the people who create the artwork, but all the listeners and the viewers as well of the artwork. So we get everybody talking and thinking about space and exchanging their ideas. And we've been fortunate to have over 9,000 participants now of all the different ages from 60 countries and over 400 events with more than 3 million in-person views. So those aren't social media numbers. That's like eyeballs on the artwork. And we are really excited to talk to you about our newest project, which is called Design Your Habitat, created specifically to support our community during our time of social distancing. But I'm going to take a pause because I want to hear more about Nicole, and I'm sure you do as well. And she and I originally met when we were both at NASA, so I know that she has a very impressive spaceflight history. So I think we want to hear about it. Tell us everything.
Well, you know, Jancy, I think I have to start by following on to the kind of the beginnings of SciArtExchange Exchange and why that was attractive to me. I mean, I have vivid memory of us sitting in the 4 South office, and 4 South is this building at the Johnson Space Center where the astronaut office is part of that building. And sitting in the office just several times actually talking about your vision for SciArtExchange Exchange and bringing, I don't know, just the power of science and art together in a creative way to not just present beautiful artwork, but to share really meaningful scientific ideas and solutions to the challenges we have and that we will have in the future exploring space.
And we do
And
both have technical backgrounds.
we do, yeah.
As well as some experience in the arts. With you, it's the visual arts, and with me, it's music and theater. And so I think that we really feel deep in our hearts that this is a powerful and important way to communicate and also come up with some creative solutions.
I agree. And I think it's one of these things where I personally believe that everybody has this mix of kind of the tech and the creative in them. And we all explore it a little bit differently, maybe access those things more or less in our lives. But I think there's a blend in all of us. I think we all certainly appreciate how creative presentation of really complex things helps all our brains process it better. Not just, someone who doesn't study science, but the scientists too, think about Hubble Space Telescope images, and all the colors that are in those and create these really beautiful photos for us to look at. The scientists are better understanding the ones and zeros because of how they, have created this presentation for themselves of what they're seeing through them.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so I love SciArtExchange Exchange. I'm really excited about this Design Your Habitat challenge because I think that on its own, it's a really wonderful thing, right? To think about how we live here on Spaceship Earth and how we can live and be healthy and happy on spaceships when we go further and further away from our planet too. And just in general, that's a great thing. But now, with all of us, I'm looking around, I could probably see all of the walls that, that are confining me in some way now, that I'm isolating myself within, and I can look outside. But I did those same things when I was living on the International Space Station too.
104 days. Okay,
so
this woman knows what she's talking about. Okay.
So yeah, I was really, really blessed to, first of all, get selected to be an astronaut. For the longest time, I thought, even though I loved flying, I was inspired to think about, if I like flying and want to know how things fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? And that kind of took me down the path of space. And I know I probably don't look it, but old enough to have watched that first moon landing, right? And I think even as a 6 or 7-year-old, you understand how extraordinary something like that is. But the idea of being an astronaut, that didn't really cross my mind until much later, because for me, it seemed like, wow, that's something only other special people get to do. Why would they ever pick me, right? And Jancy, I think I think we all kind of somewhere along the way lay this self-doubt on ourselves that
that's a whole nother discussion.
I know.
Okay.
As a neuroscientist, maybe you can tell me about that too sometime. But
I think just as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we, in many ways, have control of things, at least part of the way through, and we should take advantage of those times where we have control. Anyhow, long story short, I ended up really lucky to fly 2 times in space. First time was on a long duration mission, and I flew up on the Space Shuttle Discovery. They dropped me off. I spent a little over 3 months on the space station. Then I came home on the Space Shuttle Atlantis. And then about 1.5 years later, I had the chance to fly again to the station on the final flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery, but this time only for about 2 weeks, which I can tell you, they had to pull my clawing hands off the hatch to get me back
It
in
was
to
a
bring me home.
tease, right?
It
You just
was a
like, I
little
know.
teaser. Yeah, yeah. It's an amazing place. Yeah.
So you got to also do spacewalks and use the robot arms. You got the full experience there in that space station.
Yeah,
Um,
I did. And I think it's kind of cool because, you know, in paralleling what we're going through now too, we're a crew of 6, and I'm gonna shut the door so my dog doesn't bark too loud at us. So you know, living in your house like this, you got to deal with it, right? So we're a crew of 6 on the station, and we kind of have to all, it's like jack of all trades, really. You know, I might have been trained as an engineer or studied engineering and then worked, you know, for NASA doing different things, but I also had to be the medical person, and I had to fly the robotic arm, and I had to know how to fix the toilet and to make food in a way that was very different than I do, you know, sometimes down here. And I think that's a little bit of what we're going through now. We're kind of in this confined space where we're having to think about how do we become the person that does all of these things for ourselves in some way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's how do we take a small team of people or just yourself
Yeah.
and do all the things that you need to do to keep going and living well and staying safe and get all the things done. You know, we're all still working and going to school and all of those things. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions more about your space experience. So you're not off the hook yet.
Okay.
But why don't I take a minute to introduce the Design Your Habitat campaign so that then as we talk some more about space exploration, everybody will understand how it's really interesting to draw the connections between space exploration development and our current situation. So our new campaign, which just opens this week, is called Design Your Habitat, and it's the first of what we're calling the Expand Your Horizon Challenges for SciArtExchange. Exchange. And since everyone is living in this isolated and confined environment right now, more so than usual, we're going to try to take our experience to imagine what it would be like to travel through space and live on a distant planet or a harsh environment. Because, you know, where you live in outer space, locations would be even more confined and isolated than what we're doing right now. And we're going to have Nicole talk to you a little bit about this term called ICE that everyone uses in space and also on the ground, but more of that in a minute. So
But I
each
will tell
week,
you, I didn't know we use that term.
really?
I'll just tell you, it's funny, but this whole situation has brought that to light for me. I never had heard that term before. Maybe I retired before they started using it.
Actually, that could be
Yeah,
because it's big in the research, you know, in the, like the current research environment, and so, but it's a very useful term, and
absolutely.
I think it really helps to, and we can kind of like walk through that a little bit, you know, as we draw the parallels between space and Spaceship Earth
Absolutely.
right now. But so for Design Your Habitat, we're going to take advantage of this time and talk about what would be the perfect space you imagine for yourself, either at home, in space, or on another planet. We're going to have lots of fun activities every week, and they're going to be all different kinds. They're going to be think about this, experience that, create this. And although our target audience is ages 10 to 18 for planning, we're inviting everybody of all ages to participate and also to share all of their thoughts and all the things that they make along the way as we have this virtually united journey that we're in right now. And people can share on social media using the simple hashtag Design Your Habitat, or they can use our submission system, which they can access on our website at sciartexchange.org. If they don't have social media, including if they're too young to have social media. So we have a way for everybody to share, and we really want people to share. Don't be embarrassed, just get creative and share. And this is our way of trying to help out in our community right now and basically engage everybody in space exploration, but also help everybody feel safe and also stay well during our social distancing. So that's our plan, and we're really hoping everybody gets involved, and we really want to have a lot of fun while we're thinking about space. So let's go back to talking about Nicole, because she's gotten off the hook here a little bit without talking about some more of her vast experience. So one of the things I think might be interesting for you to just make a quick comment on I think you did some art in space. Is that true?
I did. Before flying the first time, actually, I think before astronauts fly on every flight, they've kind of got the blinders on. We're thinking about, okay, what are the tasks that we have when we're going to be living on the space station or, on the space shuttle. I really need to know those things. I need to have my checklists all, made correctly so that I don't mess things up. I don't think we ever want to mess things up, right? And when you're in space and you only have this amount of time to get something done, and I think that's on two levels that you don't want to mess things up, right? The way we live and work there, it's all about life support. So everything we're doing, even if it's kind of in the back of our minds, is about how do we keep our spaceship safe? How do we survive while we're here? And then the other is, how do I do this work this scientist on the ground has been working on their whole lives, and now they've got it in space, and we're the implementers of it. So, you want to do that properly. And you want your spaceship to get there and work and then come home, So as I was getting ready for that first flight, though, one of the people that is a dear friend. Was one of my support people on the ground, Mary Jane Anderson. You might know her, Jancy. She's the one who would really helped us get all of our stuff ready to take with us. And that was the stuff that was the official stuff, and also this tiny little bag of personal stuff that you could take. It's a tiny bag.
Right.
And I, for the most part, in that bag was thinking about, my son's little stuffed animal. He was 7 when I flew the first time. Pictures of family and friends that you could then take a picture of the picture in space and then bring it back to them. That's really kind of the extent of what I was thinking. And she reminded me, Nicole, you're going to be living in space for months. There will be some free time. I know you're going to want to just float in front of that window and take pictures like all astronauts do, even if you weren't a photographer before you got there, but you become one. But she said, think about, in this little bag, is there something you could bring that's like that you enjoy doing on Earth that you could take with you to space? And so I chose this little watercolor kit and I brought it with me, and I painted a watercolor painting in space. And I can tell you, painting with watercolors in space is a little bit different than painting down here on Earth, because everything floats. You can't dip your brush into a cup of water because there's no cups of water. There's little floating balls of water. And you can't paint real time what you're seeing through the window, because at 5 miles a second, what you see is gone before you can get the brush to the paper. And all these kind of different, almost adventurous things about painting that was kind of a normal thing for me at home on Earth became this new adventure. And honestly, now with what's going on, when I do get to paint, it's a little bit more of an adventure now too, because I'm looking at it a little bit differently. I'm thinking about, what's going on around me in the world, and how I am here by myself with my husband and my son in our house and our 2 dogs. But knowing, as I look across the street, that same kind of thing is happening in the house across the street is me. It's happening down the street. It's happening all around the world. And just as I'm painting, I'm thinking about it a little bit differently. And I can tell you, when you're in space on a spaceship and you're looking out at this beautiful Earth below you, you're thinking about it a little bit differently too.
So you're getting a lot of perspective by breaking your routine or having multiple elements in your routine, both up in space. I'm sure that actually was a really nice change of pace while you're up in space. I mean, I know you very much enjoyed your space flight experience, but I think that it was probably good for your head to be in a different space. Space is a
Yeah, space
complex
of
word.
space. Yeah.
It means about 1,000 different things, right?
Yes.
But head space and environmental space and space, outer space.
Yeah.
So, but these are all the things we're talking about. And by the way, this is my current, imagined habitat. By the way, that's the view
Oh,
of
excellent.
Mars. Yes. So, while we're talking about spaces and habitats, I just
Yeah.
wanted to point that out. So, but I think you're starting to touch on some of the interesting tips that can help you when you're in a confined environment. Let's say, even if it's an interesting environment, it's very set, right? It's not completely free for you to wander wherever you want to go. And I also think that you've talked a little bit about the perspective you're having down here in your space on Earth that you also got from thinking about and recalling and sharing your experiences up on the space station. So I think that's really excellent. And that's a great segue into what we're trying to do with Design Your Habitat. But I think we should go back to that ICE term. It's
Yeah.
an acronym, so it's ICE. It stands for Isolated, Confined, and Extreme Environment. And we have some of those on Earth as well. And you actually have not just your spaceflight experience, but you also have a little experience in an underwater environment as well. You want to just take a minute about that because I think both of those are relevant as we move on to kind of talking about comparing these environments to everyone's stay at home and tips that we can share with each other on feeling really good and getting a good perspective while being at home.
Yeah, I think I love that word. The perspective word, I think, is, I think it's the best one to use in terms of how to manage, how to even enjoy these different experiences that we're having, whether we've chosen to have them by like being part of a crew that's going to go live underwater for 18 days, or we've kind of been put into a position where we wouldn't maybe choose this, but we've got to figure out how to manage it, right? And don't let me forget to talk about why that is really important with respect to living like a crew member, right?
Right.
So when we prepare to go to space, we know in space on our spaceships, we're going to be living in this extreme environment, right? We have this thin hull of metal that's protecting us. I mean, that is it's like our blue line of atmosphere, right? It's what protects us.
It's your habitat structure.
It is our structure of habitat that is, honestly, it is the thin line between us and the deadly vacuum of space, right?
Right.
When I went and lived underwater with a crew, you can think about it the same way. We're in this module, and we call it a habitat, Aquarius, that is about the size of a school bus. It sits at 60 feet underwater, on the floor of the ocean there. It's off the coast of Key Largo in some of the most beautiful water, crystal clear water that you can imagine, with all of this amazing sea life and coral reef that's protected around you. I know. I just like space. I highly recommend that as well.
Okay.
And we lived there inside of this habitat for 18 days. And the analog or the comparison to being in space was so perfect. I hadn't flown in space yet, so I really didn't know what space was like. But after having flown in space, I'm like, oh my gosh, anybody that's going to go live on a space, you need to go do this, because you're in this little space with your 5 crewmates. You can go out every day, but you can't just go out into that water and just swim around for as long as you want. You have to have special equipment on to do that, just like we do in space.
Right.
You can't just swim to the surface to escape, because our bodies physiologically, get saturated with nitrogen once you're down there. And you might have heard of the bends, and, so to swim to the surface would be really, really dangerous, or could kill you. So just like in space, you can't just go out and float home. You've got to do something really purposeful to do that. And all of it was just so similar. The confined place, the kind of the beauty that surrounded you. And yet at the same time, that beauty that was surrounding you was also a little bit deadly to you.
Yeah.
So I find myself thinking, and I think that acronym is so good because it was what? Isolation, confinement, and extreme. And both of those things are, or all of those things are true with both living in space on a spaceship and living on a habitat under the water. And I think we're going through that right now. We're isolated. We're confined because we're doing what we're supposed to do by staying not just in our house, but when we're out, you know, at a really safe distance from our family, friends, neighbors. And we're in a bit of an extreme environment because there's kind of this, I think what challenges us is it's this invisible threat to us, right? We don't see it. It's not like right in our face in a way that says, "Oh, I'm coming to get you." It's a bit invisible. So as crew members, and I'll just as just like on the space station or even underwater, there were times where my mission control team would say, "Okay, Nicole, we need you to do this thing at this time." And I'd be like, I don't know if I really want to do that then.
I don't want to do that.
I'd rather be looking through the window at this stunning planet below me, or I'd rather be scuba diving, and looking at the fish. And, but I knew that they wouldn't be asking me to do that, or telling me maybe, or putting it on my timeline, if it wasn't required in some way, if it wasn't part of why I was there as crew. And that's how I'm thinking about this right now is, hey, you know, I'd much rather be, we're talking on a Sunday, I would much rather be up the road with my mom and sisters having our normal Sunday meal together,
right,
than, you know, here just at my house today. But I know my job as a crew member here on Spaceship Earth right now to keep everyone as crew safe, to be responsible, and I don't know, to be a good crew member is for me right now to be at home and physically distancing myself.
And we're also working together to help other people to do the same thing. Yeah. And it's okay to have some entertainment and do a little bit of learning.
Yes.
On the side, and lots of creating and imagining. So I think that's a good thing. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about communicating. So you talked about, you know, missing your regular outing with family and friends, and a lot of us are going through the same thing right now. That's part of our ice yeah. situation. But then, of course, we've also got video conferencing and telephones. But do you have any insight into kind of what works with this long distance communication that we're having now, and from your experience in space?
I do, I think. You know, it's funny because I'm always trying to get my son to lift his head up from the electronic device, right? You know,
so. Totally get that.
And at the same time, I know there's some really, I mean, like we hold the whole world in our hands on those devices, right? There's every piece of information you could probably want to know. Verify your sources though, please. But, but it's pretty incredible that we have that tool available to us. And when we were in space, felt very fortunate because the way we can communicate from the space station, at least, is really, really nice. We can call home every day, multiple times if we wanted. Once a week, we had a video conference, which was so cool to have that visual. I think human beings, just like on our creative side, we're very much about the visual of things and that connection. And I think now, when we can't be in person with each other, having the opportunity to visually somehow connect. And that doesn't necessarily have to be like seeing faces, right? I think about when I was in space, a visual connection for me was being able to see Earth through the window. and know that my family was there. I can do the same thing here. I might not be able to have a video conference or FaceTime or whatever the different tools are. I don't know what they are.
The tool du jour.
Yeah, the tool du jour of visually doing it. But I can be on the phone with somebody that I really care about and talking to, and be looking out my window at the trees and the grass and the sky, and know that they can do the same thing. And I think there's something that connects us that way, connects us to where we are. Yeah, it really, there's something about knowing and accepting and acknowledging in our daily lives that we live on a planet.
And it's our habitat.
It's our habitat.
Right.
It is. And that thin blue line of atmosphere that is wrapped around all of us. Yeah, I don't care what side of the planet you're on. We all share that same blue line. And I know, I mean, I do it myself. I stand here, feet planted on the earth, and look up, and I'm in awe. It seems like it goes on forever, like it doesn't end, but it does. It's this veil, thin veil that's protecting all of us. And it's one of so many things that we can use to really understand our connection to each other, and how we are absolutely interconnected, and that everything we do affects every other living being on this planet. And that's an important thing in what we're going through right now. We deal with it on a spaceship. Everything about what I did on that spaceship in space affected my other crewmates in some way. Same thing is happening right now.
Well, and we're seeing a lot of that through people sharing things on social media, whether they be music or images. People are reaching out to communicate and connect with each other, sort of in this generalized way, not just targeting our families and friends, but reaching out to everybody with this shared experience. So I actually think, going back to perspective, that there's a lot of things that we're going to learn from this experience, even though we didn't ask for it. We're going to, for instance, there's going to be a great advance in online education, because that's what everyone's doing. I'm hoping that we're all going to, as a necessity, work on using our whole brains, developing all those capabilities that you were referring to. As a neuroscientist, everyone likes to say, oh, I don't have that part of my brain, but that's nonsense. I don't think there's anybody here working at their full capacity. So whether your DNA has determined your capacity or not, you still have room. So, I think that's really excellent. And, we've talked a little bit about how you're confined in space and a little bit isolating, although you have a crew, and some of us are alone, and some of us have a small crew with us, our furry crew and our human crew. And we've talked a little bit about staying healthy and doing our jobs, and also a little bit about how we spend our free time, being creative and doing the things that you love. They're a little bit different from your work and your chores. I wanted to know, because we're going to want to leave a little bit of time for people to ask questions later. I wanted to know if you had any tips on cohabitating in a small place. So for those of us who are sharing this time with 1, 2, or 3 other people, how do you really manage your time and your interaction with your crew in the best way possible?
I think there's one word that comes to mind, and it's respect. And maybe the other one is understanding. We, in our day-to-day lives, when we come together at home and stuff, because we've been able to separate, my son goes off to school. Now my husband and I are in a little bit different situation because we both work at home now anyway. So we've already had about 3 years of the time to adjust to what it's like to be here together working.
Right.
I think one of the big things that went into that was, okay, I had to first of all respect that he already had been working from home for like almost 20 years and had a routine, right? Had a routine, knew what here's how he would go to work at home kind of plan was, and then here's how he would separate from work at different times during the day.
So that's a good tip.
That
That's
is
managing your time.
Absolutely. You need
Even
to
if
have
it's just a different chair.
Yep.
That's my work chair.
Yep.
This is my home and fun chair.
How about I get out of my pajamas now when I start my day? That's a big deal. I mean, there's something, it's so comfortable. I mean, I did it for a while, and in space, you could very easily do that too. You could float out of your crew compartment in your sweatpants and your comfy t-shirt, and you could just fly to the other end of the station, start doing your work, and not even think about changing. But psychologically, and I didn't want to believe it because it's so comfortable to just come to the seat in my, my fuzzy PJs and my comfy t-shirt. But psychologically, there's something very important, I think, about deciding through what you wear, even, that, okay, now I'm going to work. I have this plan for my day and what I need to get done in this day, and feeling satisfied about getting that work done during that time that you've designated for it.
And also then stopping working.
Absolutely. And then stopping working, and that might involve changing again, putting some shorts on and going, out in the backyard and gardening, or kayaking with my son and my husband, or walking the dogs at a safe distance.
Yes. Not from the dogs.
Yeah, not from the doggies. But there is something to that. And being willing to get out of this seat and not just be sucked into a 24-hour vortex of work. That's not healthy for you, and it's not healthy for your crewmates, for your family.
And talking about health, it's extremely important during these times to get lots of exercise and eat well. And I know we say that all the time.
Yeah.
But now we're not even walking necessarily from our cars to the buildings. So we have to make an extra big point of taking care of that and de-stressing, all of the things, having fun, playing games, making all those transitions.
Yeah.
That we need. Now, you asked me to remind you about managing. Did we already talk about that?
I think we did. We talked about like as a crew, like not always, like the things you're asked to do aren't always what you might choose to do, but there's significance to them. I would say that, the exercise, the health side of this, the eating, the exercise is really important. And I'm in space, we get there and our brains and our bodies figure out really quickly that, ooh, I'm floating. I don't need muscles or bones anymore to survive here. So they don't they don't waste any energy maintaining them for you.
Right. If I don't need it, I'm not going to use it.
No, don't need it, not going to support it. And, and it's very cool how we adapt to these new environments. I think people will find that they are, if they open themselves up to it, they will adapt to this environment and figure out alternative ways to be satisfied, right?
Right.
In space, we exercise because when we get home, we want bones and muscles we want to be healthy on the other side of that mission when we come back to Earth. It's incredible how just getting out of the chair, I mean, that's what you figure out when you come home from space. You land after a couple months in space and you're like, oh my gosh, gravity is really, it's
really heavy.
It's really heavy. And I have to think about holding my head up and, oh my gosh, no, I can't jump over that little Barbie doll cone. And, your body just, this whole thing about just get off the couch and walk around, use your own body weight to just move throughout the day. It's huge. It's huge. So in this kind of time where maybe you can't get out and exercise the same way you would have, just get up and walk around, jog in place, because your own body weight can really, really help you.
My husband always says, do 10 burpees.
Your husband, Stanley, your husband is He should be online doing some exercise classes for us.
Well, maybe we'll arrange that for
That would be a good
habitat.
expand your horizons.
Yeah, that'll totally expand your
Experience.
horizons.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Tell him.
Well, I am too. So
Yes.
we'll see. We're going to try to keep Design Your Habitat going for probably 8 weeks with several activities every couple of days. And some of them will be listening to things like podcasts or seeing a performance that's a really interesting perspective, also merging science and music and art and thinking about space. And I did want to give you an opportunity, and then we will have to sum up, to tell us a little bit about some of your current work.
Some of my current work. Well, unfortunately, I haven't been doing a whole lot of my own artwork lately. That's a little frustrating, I'll tell you. And because I thought in this time that I'd maybe have the opportunity to do more of that. So I'm figuring out how to manage that, how to think about that. Manage it. Yeah. Maybe I just need to be a little bit more deliberate about, okay, how I section off the day. And I say, okay, this is going to be that time, but I'm working on a book. So that's what I'm thinking, okay, I'm not painting right now, but I'm creating this story for people, what I want to share. It's called Back to Earth. And it's a lot about what we've talked about today too, maybe with a little different twist. But I think, we have built this mechanical life support system in space, right? This space station. And somehow over the last 20 years, we have peacefully, successfully worked with our crewmates from 15 different countries, and with this greater mission that we've all agreed to. And there's fantastic science coming out of it. There's learning more about ourselves as humans coming out of it. We've developed a new relationship, I think, with our planet because of it. And on top of that, we've got these kind of political, cultural relationships that we've established that have been so important, not just to what we're doing in space, but to how we could extend that to how we live as crew on Spaceship Earth. So that's what that's about. And so that's my kind of creative time for me personally. But I've also been working with kids around the world where we create, it's right in line with SciArtExchange Exchange. I mean, it's just a little bit different twist on it because our whole focus all along has been like space art and healing. So really focused on the healing. The children that have been involved have been hospitals, pediatric cancer centers and refugee centers around the world. But I think now where we are with the next project, we want that to be in cooperation with the SciArtExchange Exchange, Habitat, and Expand Your Horizons theme, where we're all in isolation right now. And I think this could be a perfect complement where the two groups can finally come together in a really, really meaningful way. And I'll just point out behind me, one of our projects that we worked on, well, it's called the Spacesuit Art Project, as part of the overall work we do. And spacesuit company ILC Dover, the company that makes our real spacesuits, volunteered to help us with this. And this is just a flat version of one of the suits, but all of the artwork is artwork from kids around the world. And it comes together in this global community piece of artwork that happens to be a spacesuit. And it's just really cool. I think in this time that we're going through right now too, when we think about isolation, I mean, imagine yourself in one of these spacesuits. That's a habitat too. That is a habitat. You have separated yourself in every other way that's possible from other human beings around you, from the extreme environment, and you are isolated.
I think what we're hoping is that we're going to learn from this experience that we're all having. We're going to gain that perspective that you were talking about. Maybe we'll make some advancements. Maybe we'll learn some things about ourselves as we develop our strategies to to, you know, not always focus on one thing but another. And design your habitat is really also to help make these connections that will allow us to have that new perspective. But also it's an opportunity for everyone who's participating, not just us who are talking here and those who will come and visit over the weeks or months that are going forward, but everybody who participates is encouraged to share. And and through their sharing, they're bringing us together, they're helping, they're explaining some of the things that have worked for them, they're giving their positive spin, there'll be an opportunity for humor as well as creativity. So I really hope that this is going to be a positive experience and that everybody will share. And I really appreciate your talking with us today. And there will be an
Absolutely.
opportunity for people to ask questions through the live chat as well. So do you want to make a parting comment?
Well, I would like to say thank you for including me. I'm really looking forward to seeing what everyone from around the world contributes to this challenge, and thinking about it, I think in both ways. I love the challenge in that there's the habitat side of it, and there's the expand your horizons side of it, which gets us
Exactly.
thinking, you know, thinking beyond the confines of where we are right now, and looking at how do we take what we're experiencing right now with us into the future when we're all back physically together again, and we've learned something from this too. There
And
can be
also
goodness. Yeah.
doing amazing things like exploring even beyond where we are right now,
Yep.
whether it's into the seas or it's to the moon and Mars. All of these things are going to help us gain perspective and knowledge and skills and the chance to work together. So go team. Thank you so much,
You're
Nicole, for
welcome.
talking with us, and have a nice rest of your day.
See ya.
Bye bye.